It was a chilling 911 call that rang through the New Orleans Police Department on the evening of January 6, 2024.
New Orleans 911, this location of emergency. I'm at the corner of Washington and Magnolia. Somebody just got shot in front of my door. They're lying on the ground right now. I think she did. Oh, an officer will be dispatched to the location.
At 6:13 p.m., a frantic caller reported a horrific scene. Somebody just got shot in front of my door. They're lying on the ground right now. I think she's dead. What followed was a chain of events that would leave the police with more questions than answers.
It's a great place to do a murder, dude. It's like quiet. We got no witnesses, no cameras that we can see.
Anybody knows the victim? Any family? Nobody else in yet?
When officers arrived at the scene on the 2,700 block of Washington Avenue in Central City, New Orleans, they were met with a grim sight. A woman lay motionless on the sidewalk, blood pooling around her body, seeping into the cracks of the pavement. The immediate assessment of the situation revealed 2 gunshot wounds, one to the head and one to the stomach. But the blood spatter suggested the victim had attempted to run for her life before collapsing, adding a sense of desperation to the scene. The location itself appeared to be carefully chosen. Quiet, with no witnesses or cameras nearby, it was an ideal place for a murder to occur undetected. As detectives assessed the crime, it became clear that robbery was not the motive.
There's a lady said she heard her arguing with a male. They were arguing pretty loud because she was upstairs and she didn't hear. She heard several gunshots. Okay. Hearing that a male and a female were arguing prior to gunshots tells me that this person may have been close to the victim.
The victim's purse, phone, and wallet were still in place. This wasn't a random act of violence. What stood out most was the victim's position at the scene. She seemed to have been ambushed. There were no obvious clues left behind by the killer, making it even harder for the authorities to determine the motive or identify potential suspects. As the detectives worked, they discovered more gunshot wounds, at least 7 in total, marking her hand, arm, and head. This led them to believe the attack had been planned, with no signs of a struggle.
After I left from with her, she told me she was going home.
So you was with Kayla?
Yeah.
At what time?
20 or 5.
Did you ask her, like, what made her think that's your cousin?
No, I didn't. It's New Orleans.
The investigation quickly turned to the neighbors. A woman from a nearby apartment building reported hearing loud arguing between a man and a woman shortly before the gunshots rang out. This was a crucial lead. Someone had been close to the victim in the moments before her death, and it suggested the killer may have been known to her. As detectives canvassed the area, 2 individuals, clearly shaken, approached the scene, asking about a missing family member. A man claimed the woman lying on the sidewalk looked like his cousin, though he wasn't sure. This immediately raised suspicion. The couple seemed strangely hesitant, offering vague and inconsistent answers when questioned. They told the police they had been with the victim earlier that evening, but didn't know how she had ended up on Washington Avenue. The situation only became more bizarre when it was revealed that the woman had not even bothered to call the victim to confirm her identity, despite standing just feet away from her alleged cousin's body. With their suspicions growing, the couple was separated for further questioning. As the investigation deepened, the detectives learned the identity of the victim, 27-year-old Kayla Kelly. The more they dug, the more the couple's behavior raised red flags. They knew more than they were letting on, but could they be the ones responsible for this brutal crime? The detectives now faced the difficult task of unraveling a web of lies and deception.
What made you think that was your friend? Somebody told you that?
No, sir.
Did you know she was going to be in this area?
No, sir.
So before you called your boyfriend, did you call Kayla to see if it was Kayla?
No, I didn't call Kayla.
I've been doing this a long time, and I'm telling you something is missing here.
We just
understand that.
To make sure it wasn't her.
At first, the suspect claimed he had been at work during the time of Kayla Kelly's murder, so detectives decided to verify his alibi. They called his workplace, where an employee confirmed that he had arrived around 5 p.m. and left between 7 and 7:30 p.m. The employee mentioned that the man had said he needed to leave due to a family emergency. However, his story was odd. He claimed that his brother had shot his girlfriend. The employee found the statement strange and out of place, which only raised more questions for detectives. This revelation, though bizarre, was now a lead. The only clue detectives had was the first name Earl, which they dug into further.
I'm asking you, because you're involved just as much as him. Must be well. Knowing that this female came to me and said that they believed that this was Kayla, I was expecting some type of remorse, but not receiving none.
After some investigation, they discovered a man named Earl Michael Simmons, a 31-year-old with a criminal record, including several domestic disturbances. His violent history fit the pattern detectives were starting to see. It seemed likely that the argument before the gunshots had been between Kayla and Earl, but they needed confirmation before jumping to conclusions. To verify if Earl and Kayla knew each other, detectives showed a photo of Earl to a woman who had been with the suspect. The woman was visibly uncomfortable and refused to engage in the conversation. Despite multiple questions, she remained tight-lipped and showed no sign of recognition when shown the photo. The detectives' frustration grew as they pressed her, even reminding her of the pain Kayla's family must be feeling, but she still refused to talk. The detectives then shifted their attention to the man accompanying her, hoping he might be more forthcoming. However, he too refused to answer any questions, maintaining the same silence. The detectives pushed them both for answers, but they remained unmoved. This only strengthened their suspicion that the pair knew more than they were letting on, with the woman possibly trying to protect her brother, Earl.
I've never had anybody say that to me. I was like, if you try to go to work, this is not the way to do it. So
Yeah.
It was a very strange ordeal. So I wanted to make sure I brought that up.
Appreciate it.
You didn't say anything, the name was further, but when you showed me the contact on his phone, it was Earl.
Okay.
At this point, the detectives knew they needed more evidence. They decided to gather surveillance footage from around the crime scene to see if they could find any links between Earl and Kayla. The footage from nearby cameras could offer crucial insights, so they set off to search for any leads. Before continuing the investigation, detectives had one more difficult task. They had to inform Kayla's family. They reached out to her father, a former police officer, to gather more information about Kayla's recent interactions. The conversation provided little new information, but detectives were determined to keep pushing forward. The next day, detectives went door to door near the crime scene, hoping for new leads or any helpful footage. Though many neighbors hadn't seen anything, the detectives managed to uncover a crucial breakthrough. Surveillance footage showing Earl's face clearly. The footage confirmed that he had been with Kayla that night. As they watched, they saw Earl and Kayla arguing on the street before the gunshots rang out. This footage gave the detectives enough evidence to press charges, but what happened next shook them even more. Another camera captured the exact moment of the murder with clear flashes of gunfire, leaving no doubt about Earl's involvement. However, just when they thought they had uncovered everything, a shocking new development arose. A case involving another man named Eddie Matthews was reported just hours after Kayla's murder, and his case had a similarly chilling piece of CCTV footage. But what truly sent a shiver down the spines of everyone?
You'll get a male, it's gonna come right here. He's gonna walk in front of the camera, which is great, because it's a clear shot of his face.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's him, yeah. Look at that gap. That's like
Yeah.
pretty clear cut.
As you
tension.
watch it, you can see like they're talking to each other.
Mm-hmm.
The cases of Kayla and Eddie were tragic, but what truly sent a chill through everyone involved was the ballistic report. It confirmed that the same gun had been used in both murders. This new revelation made it highly likely that one person, one killer, was responsible for both deaths. As the detectives on each case, Edmund Walker for Kayla and Jamison Deesberg for Eddie, pieced the evidence together, the chilling reality set in. Errol Simmons may have committed 2 homicides in the span of just a few hours on the same night. The enormity of the situation left everyone shocked. The 2 victims, killed less than 4 miles apart, seemed unrelated at first. Eddie, a former mechanic who had fallen on hard times, was living on the streets after his wife's death. He was a quiet man who didn't stir up trouble, yet he was killed in cold blood. Kayla, on the other hand, seemed to have a complicated, possibly even close relationship with Earl. But why would he end her life? This question lingered in the air, unexplained. Detectives began to connect the dots. A surveillance video comparison between the 2 cases showed something chilling. The same man, the same gun, and the same coldness. The realization was clear. 2 lives had been taken by the same person, and they had been killed in such similar ways. Now this was no longer just a hunt for a killer, it was a race to stop a merciless predator before he killed again. The investigation moved swiftly. With enough evidence collected, detectives were eager to issue an arrest warrant for Errol Simmons. But there was still a massive question to answer. Why would someone kill 2 people who seemed completely unrelated? The motive remained a mystery. There was no obvious link between Eddie and Kayla. Eddie's death appeared senseless, and Kayla's death was even more perplexing, given her apparent connection with Earl. Detectives pressed forward, desperate to find the truth behind these gruesome murders. In the meantime, the clock was ticking. Earl Simmons had vanished after Kayla's murder, and the detectives had only so much time before he could disappear entirely.
It was tucked in a shoe, right, in the back corner of a closet that was filled with junk. Man,
Well, that's why we don't come one person by themselves to bring it to
such
you.
a good catch, man. Excellent find.
It's a proud moment finding a gun, and hopefully that firearm matches the ballistic evidence that we have, which would put a bow on this case.
But their luck turned on January 18th, 2024, when they tracked Earl to his brother's house. What followed was a tense confrontation. Earl attempted to flee through the back door, but detectives managed to capture him after a short chase. They found that his house was in disarray, resembling something more akin to a dog kennel than a human residence. The conditions were appalling. While searching his home, detectives uncovered key evidence. Shell casings from the same caliber used in both murders were discovered on a bed. This was a promising lead, but they still needed the murder weapon itself. As they continued to search, they found the weapon, tucked away inside a shoe in a corner of a messy closet. This discovery was pivotal. The gun matched the ballistic evidence, bringing detectives one step closer to closing the case. With Earl Simmons now in custody, the next step was an interrogation. From the moment he sat down, it was clear Earl was agitated. There was a palpable sense of nervous energy in the room, like he knew the walls were closing in on him. Detectives made sure to explain the gravity of the situation. He was under arrest for 2 murders. The weight of this declaration seemed to sink in slowly as Earl attempted to deny everything.
I'm Detective Edmund. Detective Bird, both part of the homicide division. Right now you are under arrest for 2 homicide charges.
I'm under arrest for 2 homicide charges.
We can explain everything to you, but prior to doing so, I'm gonna advise you of your rights for memorandum, okay?
During the interrogation, Earl admitted to having a close relationship with Kayla, but vehemently denied killing her. He maintained his innocence, even after detectives presented him with the murder weapon they had found in his home. When they revealed that the gun was the same caliber used in both killings, Earl still refused to connect himself to the weapon. At this point, detectives decided to turn up the heat. They showed him a still from the surveillance footage of one of the murders. The image clearly showed someone who looked very much like Earl. Earl's reaction was telling. He tried to deny it, suggesting that it wasn't him in the picture. But the more he denied it, the more his story crumbled. Despite his efforts to deflect and deny, detectives pressed on, showing him footage from Eddie's murder as well. The pattern was clear. Earl had been involved in both killings, even if he refused to acknowledge it. Frustration built as Earl stubbornly refused to admit his involvement in the murders. Detective Deesberg, who had worked Eddie's case, confronted Earl about his actions. It was a tense moment, and Earl's defensiveness became more apparent. He continued to deny everything, even as the evidence mounted against him. The detectives were fed up but knew they had more than enough evidence to charge him with both murders, regardless of his confession.
He got issued yesterday by the court. He was supposed to go to court, but he didn't go. Mr. Simmons. Mr. Simmons. Mr. Simmons.
Y'all got me in here. Talk about y'all just want to talk. Y'all want to question me. Y'all charge me with some.
We don't move his hand. That's not bad.
In the final moments of the interrogation, Earl became increasingly erratic. He lashed out, picking up a table and causing a scene. Officers had to step in, warning him to cooperate as they moved forward with his arrest. Earl resisted, but the inevitable was clear. He was being booked on 2 counts of second-degree murder. As of now, there are no updates on his trial, but the most important thing is that Earl Simmons is off the streets. The detectives involved can finally breathe a sigh of relief, knowing that the person responsible for two heinous crimes is no longer a threat. The community, too, can begin to heal, knowing that justice will hopefully be served for Kayla and Eddie, even if their deaths remain shrouded in mystery. The case is still ongoing, but one thing is clear. Earl Simmons's arrest has brought a much-needed sense of closure to those affected by these tragic murders. And for those seeking justice, this is a bittersweet victory.